we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicinda. I am Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP. We're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope, our desire is to help great indie designers find amazing players who love their games and help amazing players find great indie designers whose games they can love. Prestige Class is a series where we sit down with a creator whose work we have been following or somebody who has a new project up who we're excited to talk about. Today we are sitting down with the person who has the most super villainy name I've ever sat down next to, Lex Mandrake, potentially going to destroy the world before the end of the stream, but at least we're going to get a chance to talk about your new project, AZAG, which I'm super excited to dive into, at least if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I don't know. Double A's, who knows? I'll let you say it in a second because that's going to be canon. But you have a new project out. You've actually done a couple of dungeon synth, like music and game design projects fused together. I'm super excited to talk about it. Why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, but also give us the elevator pitch for this new project.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for having me, Tony. It's really great to be here. I love the show. I love the channel. I love the positivity you send out in the world. It's really
Thank you.
great. But yeah, I'm Lex. You can find me on Twitter at Dank Dungeons. That's where I do most of my stuff because I enjoy living in a hellscape. But basically, I do a lot of different RPG writing. I did an actual play show for a while. I do streaming from time to time on various channels. And goodness, the thing that I'm calling AZAG, although I don't know if that's right. Listen, I'm gonna say a lot of names in this podcast or this show at some point, and am I gonna pronounce any of them correctly? Probably not. But we're just gonna all live with that. And I'm gonna apologize in advance. But yeah, so AZAG is a weird Bronze Age sword and sorcery game. It is inspired mechanically by things like Advanced Final Fantasy and Troika, the more modern version. And in terms of setting and theme, it is inspired by like kind of the weirder corners of Appendix N. So you've got your Dying Earth Vance stuff. You've got your kind of like the odder Conan stories, the Clark Ashton Smith Hyperborea stuff, and oh, who am I forgetting? There's someone else who's important in there. Uh, it'll come to me. Don't worry about
That's right.
it.
And you had a lot of, hold on. You had a lot of amazing collaborators on the project also too. Tell me about the team you pulled together on this. Cause I want to talk just about your entry into it, but I'm in love with so many of the people you got to work with on this project. So I would love to hear just like people hear some of the names you'd have to do some of the music, the art, the design. Tell us who you got to work with.
So yeah, now comes the part where I mispronounce everyone's
Do
name.
it.
And I'm so sorry. These people are all amazing, and I feel like I'm gravely insulting them. But we have Diogo Nogueira.
That's pretty good.
Really awesome. That guy rules, and he's also just, like, super accessible. Really very prolific OSR writer from Brazil. If you're not familiar, go look up his work. It's all amazing. So when I was, concepting out this project and I wanted to bring people in, he was one of the first people I messaged, over Twitter, and he was, like, 110% in. So, cool. Uh, then we have Safia Aldulajan, who is in Saudi Arabia. And she, let's see, she was doing a stream about, um, I think it was looking at, it was a sub stream or like an adjacent stream to the like Asians Represent stuff that is that podcast kind of dissecting the way uh, Orientalism has been brought up in like RPGs, specifically TSR and the Oriental Adventures book and everything. And they had a sub show of that, which was about Zakar, the Land of Fate. And one of the people on that, I was talking to him, and I was like, "Hey, I would really love to work with a writer from the Middle East do you know anyone who does fiction writing? And he recommended me to her. So I got in touch with her, and she sent me some writing samples, and they were amazing. So I asked her if she would be on the project as well. Um, and then Mahar Mangalas. Again, I'm really sorry. I'm probably mispronouncing everyone's names. I'm so sorry. I see them written most of the time. But they are really cool. I think I just saw them commenting on something Diogo was posting with like a game that they had put up on Itch, and it was just like a really cool narrative game. And I looked at it and I downloaded it and I read the writing, and I'm like, wow, that is such a cool arthurial voice, right? And I was like, I'm going to contact them and see if they're interested. And they're in not Hong Kong, but near Hong Kong, I believe. So yeah, really cool. So that's my writing team, right? Oh, and I'm sorry. Other important writer, Chris Boudreau. He just lives in Florida, so that's like not interesting, right?
That's a whole other country. It is
Ye-
interesting. Florida is a very interesting place, but not in the way any of us want it to be.
No.
So
But Chris is awesome. I've worked with him on a bunch of projects over the years, and mostly our writing relationship is I will message him and be like, "Chris, I have this really great idea. Can you just like flesh it out for me?" And he'll be like, "Yeah, I guess, fine," and then he'll help me with it. So he did a lot of heavy lifting on this project, and yeah, he was awesome. He's always awesome to work with. So big thanks to him. But yeah, that's my writing team. And then in terms of art, we have Louis Mello. What is it? Party in the Front, I think, is his like website name. But he's a Portuguese artist who I just stumbled across because someone was retweeting his stuff, and it's really cool. So I went to his website and I was like, "Does he do commissions?" Yes, you can email him. I wonder what his rates are, and he told me, and I'm like, considering the caliber of your art, those rates sound perfectly reasonable. Would you do a cover for my book? And he said, yeah, man, totally. So that's how that happened. And Logan Stahl, who I have worked with in the past on my last thing, which was The Shifting City. I don't remember how I came across his stuff. Somewhere on Facebook, maybe. I don't know. He had posted some piece somewhere, and I thought like, oh, that looks cool. So I worked with him a little bit on that book, and he's just really wonderful to work with. I think he's in Jersey, and yeah, he's
another exotic land.
yeah. In terms of smells, very exotic,
Yeah.
I'd say. But yeah, he's super awesome to work with. So when I was doing this project, I was like, "Hey, I have a budget for this. Do you wanna do, like, a ton of art for it? And I'll pay you, like, really well." And he was like, "Yes, very much so." So he was on board, and I really snatched him up before he started, like, working on all these really rad Kickstarters, like Desert Moon of
Mhm.
Karth, I think is the name of it, that mothership thing. He's doing, like, a bunch of the art for that, and he really got catapulted from that because I was so successful.
Yeah, Desert Moon of Karth, we got to play it on the channel, did a review of it. Phenomenal game, absolutely like great to check out. But the art is gorgeous. Like it sells. I mean, like the setting and the creation that Joel did is phenomenal. But the art on that game is so good. All the Mosh collaborators in that whole Kickstarter scene this year just did an absolutely killer job on building beautiful projects together. It was
Mhm.
crazy. And so
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I want to talk about it more in a second, but we usually just start with this question like, hey, we are talking about designing TRPGs, but you at some point decided to play RPGs. So tell me just a little bit about how you got started playing games.
Oh, man. Uh, you know that classic answer whenever people are talking about video games where they're like, "My dad works at Nintendo." Um, it's a little bit like that. One of my best friends growing up, his aunt worked at TSR, and she did, like, distribution. I think she didn't design anything, but she had tons of merchandise, like, in her basement. I think still has tons of merchandise in her basement because for those who know about TSR, that's just kind of like a thing. They overprinted everything. So when we were growing up, we got lots of copies of Second Edition AD&D, and I was very captivated by it, and we played it. Uh, Interestingly enough, we didn't play it correctly, because we were 8 and didn't understand the rules of Second Edition AD&D. Because why would we? um, but we ran the game in a way that I that I think is very novel now as someone who's played games for a really long time, and I wish that people learned to play this way, which was every session was a one shot, and the DM rotated around the table every session because that's how we just thought it was supposed to be played. So it would be like, oh, next week it's Lex's turn to run something, and then the week after that, like Dan's gonna run something. And it was like actually a very cool way to get introduced to RPGs.
That's
But
cool.
yeah.
Did y'all shared universe, or was it like
No, it was just a completely different thing. I mean, sometimes it would be like generic fantasy setting because again, we were like 8, so whatever. But yeah, no, otherwise there was no rules to on setting or anything like that.
that's cool. Yeah, no, the first so I played the red box when I was like 8 or something. Like I sat down and played a game of Dungeons and or Dragons at one point when I was very young and loved it and chased that high for a couple years but could never find anyone to play with me. I grew up in the South and like Satanic Panic is a thing, and even though
Mm,
my parents didn't fall for it a ton, like I realized in an interview much later in life, like wait a minute, there's no way our local game store didn't have copies of D&D in it every single time my mom went in to go shopping for them. It's such a weird coincidence. However, I started playing in GURPS when I was like 18, 19, and loved it. But it was a rotating GM setup, and we did have a shared universe, but it was so great. We had like 5 shared universes. But everybody could play or GM in either one. But it does something interesting at the table because it also automatically is like, look, if I'm a jerk to you this time around, like you're going to be sitting in that seat. And it also, it like immediately diffuses authority conversations lots of the time. I mean, as 8-year-olds,
mm.
maybe it doesn't. Um, but it does some just really interesting things for the cohesiveness of the group. That's really cool. I do think that's a great idea as far as teaching kids to play.
Yeah, no, I think it was really novel, and looking back on it, I was like, I don't think most people learn to play that way, but I wish they did because it's a really interesting experience. But yeah, after that, oh gosh, third edition came out, um, and we started playing that. We got really into that. We were in middle school. What are you gonna do? I don't know. But then sort of like as I got into high school, I was like, RPGs aren't cool. I want to listen to the Rolling Stones and get really into classic rock. So I played a little less then, and kept trying to get back into it during college, but it was just a matter of time. Like everyone was busy with homework and classes and stuff, and we could never get a regular game going. Although we did play a short-lived campaign of Call of Cthulhu that was a lot of fun. But yeah, so that then after college, gosh, few years went by just playing games, but mostly video games, not as many role playing games and stuff. And then fifth edition was coming out, and I was like, you know what? This is as good a time as any to jump back in. So I did, and gosh, I know you don't talk about fifth edition very much, but man, I've played a
I'm
lot of fifth
happy to talk
edition.
about fifth edition. So I don't. We talked about this right before, and I don't dis. I mean, like I don't. It's not my game system that I like to play.
Mhm,
I so let me talk about how much I love GURPS again as part of that. GURPS first edition and GURPS fourth edition, the major differences are point balancing. Like it's a refinement. Like
mhm,
there's not a significant mechanical change. I actually feel that is also largely true about any D20 system. Like all
mhm.
D20 systems, if you know one, you know the other. In the same way that if you know like AFF or Warhammer, like you know the other ones. I'm not against it. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is not like it's not a game that I'm excited to sit down and play, but I also am excited to always sit down and have fun with my friends or with other people. And so if 5th edition is the game we're playing when we do that, I'm totally down for that. It's just not the one that I
Yeah.
gravitate to. Like it's
No,
not,
totally. It is really about your table and the people you're playing with. That's
yeah.
obviously the most important thing of any game, no matter what video game, board game, RPG, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I've found that in my old age, I have really started to prioritize playing lots of different games. Because I just like when I was younger, I'd pick my game and my friends would be playing that, and then we would just play that game for
Yeah.
like years, right? But now that like you can play over the internet really easily, I'm like, oh, I could just go and play like freaking anything. We could find some people to play something. It'd be great. So, yeah, in recent years, tried to do more of that. I've gotten into more OSR stuff. So, like, I got into BX, I got into Dungeon Crawl Classics, I actually ended up running some streams of BX, which were a lot of fun, and yeah, a couple other odds and ends. But yeah, so I that's sort of my ongoing quest is to play more different kinds of games and get exposed to more different kinds of mechanics. Because as someone who likes to tinker and make games and mess around with mechanics, that's like the best way, right, to get inspired to do different things.
Yeah, like to see something and be like, "Oh, that's cool. What if we did this with it? Or what if we put it
Mhm.
in this? Or what if we put this thing?" Like some of the great stuff about like AFF, Troika, a lot of the British OSR, it is so procedurally written and bounce is not really part of the conversation that it's like, okay, cool. You want a character that does X instead and that doesn't exist? Like, great. We know exactly how to do that. You're going to give it this, and this because the stats, there's only two stats or whatever. And, it's just skill based. So pick the right number of skills. And if those skills don't exist, just make them up and we'll add them in. And you're going to do it the exact same way you do everything else, and you go from there. But that type of ability to take iterative design exists in most systems. Like most systems, you can pick up something really great from and say, okay, how would I drop that in over here and do something else with it? The Brain Trust, a community that I'm a part of, does they hosted a thing called Tech Jam last month, which is just like if you got a cool idea for a game stuff, even if you've never made a game out of it, just a cool mechanic, just drop it in here and like let other people make mechanics out of it if you're never going to use it, because there are so many good ones that we'll pick up or that even get shedded during the design process that we never touch. And so like I said, I'm always just super excited to see what other people have going on and what other people have come up with, and just playing their game or reading their games are such great ways to
Mhm.
do that. If you are just joining us, we're sitting down, we're talking with Lex Mandrake, who's recently released the AZAG project. We're actually going to listen to some of the music in just a little bit, if that's all right.
No, that's not all right. What are you
Don't give
talking?
my
Yeah,
music
no, that's
away
fine.
for free.
Uh,
Uh, and
I
so,
should talk about the artist though, shouldn't I? That would be important if we're gonna listen
yeah,
to the music.
absolutely. That's what I say. So this is a new project, but you've done a lot with Dungeons. I want to talk about it. I do want to queue up. You talk about the artist while I pick a song and get it ready to
Sure.
go, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
talk about the system a little bit more. We'll just put it in the background and let it doobly do.
Ooh, yeah, that's great. Nice background music. My previous project, The Shifting City, I did all the music myself. It's very sort of dungeon synthy meets some synthwave because I listen to that a lot. But what I wanted to do was keep doing more projects that had musical components. And for this one, I realized when I embarked on it, like I'm going to make a game system and a world. I do not also have time to make an album with it as much as I would like to. So I started thinking about people in the community who do RPG themed music, and I was thinking about a lot of different dungeon synth artists, and I had just heard Loot the Bodies. Oh gosh, their Expedition to the Barrier Peaks songbook, and it just blew me away. Like that album is so amazing. It's just a psychedelic rock album, but it's about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, old school D&D adventure. And I just thought that was amazing. It's such a great idea for a combination of two things, like a great chocolate and peanut butter moment, right? So I messaged Levi, the guy behind Luth Body on Twitter, and I was like, "Yo, dude, I'm doing this project. Would you be interested in doing music for it?" And I'm just looking for like some instrumental like jam tracks that could be used as background music when playing the game. And at first he was like, "Man, I got so much stuff going on. I don't know." And then I got a message from him like a week later, and he's like, "I just really want to do it. I don't know if I have time, but I just really want to do it. So let's do it." And I was like, "All right, dude." um,
Well, and
yeah,
it's become such a thing recently. Like I've told people a couple times before streams. I don't know if I've said it on stream or not. Like I have the ability to now easily play music into the stream, but the way I have it set up easily to play music into the stream is that I have a record and a cassette player next to me that I can play records on, and I can play like I can't put a CD into my computer, but I can play a record on my computer, and I
yep,
can
yep.
play a cassette on my computer. I can also play MP3s, which we're about to do on my computer. My easy way of adding music to my streams was all of the great things that are coming out right now that are game, not just dungeon synths, but game content mixed with game and music. And like we had a stretch goal for Repugnant that we were gonna, like, it was inventing a new type of music, so it was a way higher stretch goal than it would have been otherwise. But like Orbital Blues has it out right now. Ancient
Yeah.
Death Spider Wizard just
Hmm.
dropped, which is a great album. There's just Philip Reed did this phenomenal adventure that was it's Tower of Scoundrel that's about to deliver this month. There's all these people who are doing great game content, and most of them are like adventures or background for something, but we're starting to see people fuse the background audio with the design. I love that. Like, I'm super excited about it, and like I've been excited about AZAG for that exact reason. So let's talk about, so we've got a different tracks. I can't play one of them because I put it in as our intro music. So if you heard us coming in, that was the first track on the album. That said, we've got the Warlock's Defeat. While I talk to a teenager real quick, tell us a little bit about the concept for the different tracks. And if there's anything specific we need to know about the Warlock's Defeat, let us know. I don't want any spoilers, for people playing the adventure later. Give me just one. Go ahead and talk about it. I'm going to talk to a teenager.
Sure. So yeah, with the tracks, the concepts are really not as involved as you might think. It was basically like Levi was throwing some musical stuff out there at me, and he was like, "Is this the right kind of mood that you're looking for?" And I said, "Yes, 100%. This is exactly what I want." And he just numbered them, and I was like, "Cool, I'll just name them by what feels right." Right, but before, I guess, before he started writing anything aside from just the general concept, right, that I gave him, I had written a bunch of short fiction for the game, and I had just sent that all to him as like sort of world building type stuff, so he kind of could get that vibe in his head more clearly. And the Warlock's Defeat refers to a specific part of the first short story that appears in the book, which talks about a warlock that decides to go and on this bloody campaign of conquest with his army, and all the opposing armies can't stop them. But the thing that stops them are these singing plants that are just like trying to protect themselves. So they sing, and when they sing, it makes you understand what is morally right and wrong. And the army realizes that conquest and carnage is inherently bad, so they throw down their weapons and give up and go home.
I'm so excited to dive into some of the conversations about the design of this. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to hit play on this song, raise up the audio, give people a listen. We'll give it a couple seconds, then we'll kind of come back. All the plant music. They're saving us right now. But I love that story. And let's talk about this. I'm going to keep this going in the background. People out there listening, tell us if it's too quiet, too loud, whatever. Let us know. But you have a lot of things you're trying to say with the design of this project. Like, there's OSR, there's sword dream, there's a lot of terms people will use for like old school vibe, old school Renaissance stuff. Some people just kind of ignore the cultural realities around a lot of like Bronze Age stuff and other elements. You really try to, seems like, dive into that in your design.
Yeah, because a lot of these, like I was saying, are inspired by like the pulps. That's who I was forgetting. Frickin' Lovecraft, everybody's favorite author.
He contributed on this? No, I'm just kidding.
So Lovecraft's dream cycle in specific, I thought was like really interesting, and taking a lot of that, the old pulp, like weird stuff, I felt like it just went with psychedelic rock really well, and then trying to basically just take this genre of like weird fiction and sword and sorcery and bring in these other writers who have different cultural perspectives, like the kind of people who in the 1930s were not writing pulp stories, right? And be like, hey folks, here's this genre, here's some samples of of stories from it. What is your take on this genre? Write me a short story in the genre, like a 500-word thing. And that was like the first task that I gave to like all my writing team people. And man, did they deliver. They brought back some really cool stuff. Mahar's thing is just centered on like a transgender character who like casts all these spells and like keeps their nation together and repels outside invasion, which is super cool. And Diogo's story is just like a kind of classic premise of just sort of this warrior in this sort of weird area, right? But it's a very powerful female warrior instead of the like obvious Conan, like a big buff dude, right? And Safia's is this, oh, it's the characterization is so interesting. It's a general who's working for one of like the big empires, right? And they're waging this war, and they have all of these sort of inner conflicts about like their duty to their soldiers and their family, and like how they have like been a powerful like spellcaster in their family for generations, right? And how that's like a lot to live up to and everything. So they have to win because that's all that pressure on them. And oof, just really, really interesting and very different takes on the genre that, you know, don't include a lot of the problematic stuff from that genre, right? It's a good thing to try to avoid. But that was my thing, right? With a lot of the setting and the fiction in this book was like, I really love sword and sorcery. I love the pulps. I recognize that they have problems, like significant problems, and I really want to approach it from a different way, give a different perspective on it, and just kind of try and show people what like weird fiction and sword and sorcery could be through a different lens.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really easy to feel like Bronze Age stuff or American stuff is somehow removed from some of the colonialism of like its British ancestry, which is weird that we feel that way, but for some reason we do. And I love that you wanted to dive into say like, what if we embraced that as a reality, named it as a reality, and then tilted it on its head and did something different with it. And that's a really great like it's a really great exploration process. And I mean, this is basically the Lovecraft Country of tabletop role-playing designs. No, but in like Lovecraft Country, the popular series that was recently on, there's like an opening thing because the main character, who's a black man, is reading a book by Lovecraft, and there's this conversation about naming and knowing the problematic parts of the things that you love, and just knowing that they're problematic and not letting them off the hook for being problematic, but not letting that spoil the parts that you enjoy either. And it's a very like cool nuanced conversation that the series itself is really fleshing out. Some of that same ethos really appears in what you're doing. I also think it's interesting that you went with a British OSR system, which is directly responsible for a lot of the specific style, like as far as British OSR style, as which is directly responsible for a lot of the specific ills you're addressing also too, which is just I think a cool approach. Tell me, was that intentional? Like, were you like, I want to go British for that reason, or is that a different design choice?
So the British connection was not intentional. In fact, I think when I first started reading fighting fantasy, it didn't even dawn on me that it was British. I didn't realize that until much later. But no, it's the other stuff so the comparison to Lovecraft Country is very apt. Except for the fact that I wouldn't want to compare myself to a piece of media that's like that well crafted, because I feel extremely egotistical doing that.
I was making a hyperbolic statement so that you didn't have to. I'm
yeah, there you go. But no, I had watched that show, and that's a novel, right? I feel like I really
it is a book also. Yeah, it started as a book, became a novel. They even do really great things in the show of showcasing how and why it's different from the book. That are kind of soft mentions that you only get if you've read both of them. So, but yeah.
But that was sort of part of the idea there is seeing them do that and be like, oh yeah, it is. You can totally explore these old pulps in different ways, and it's a very fruitful sort of exploration, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's me in terms of like setting and everything, and then mechanically, like advanced fighting fantasy. I had what did I read first? I read Troika first, I think, because I kept hearing so much about it and how it's like an indie darling, and I was like, oh, I should check this out, and I did, and I found it very interesting. And I sort of started reading it, and then I found out that it was based off of fighting fantasy, and I'm like, oh, like the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. I remember reading that like way back in the day. So then I went back and grabbed a used, like very used copy of Dungeoneer from 1988, 89, when they took the fighting fantasy, turned it into advanced fighting fantasy, made it playable as a role-playing game with your friends instead of just an adventure book, and read through that whole thing. And I was like, this is a really, for 89, that game is extremely well designed. Like, I was blown away by how forward thinking a ton of the stuff in that book was. And then there's also huge chunks of it that I was like, oh no, this is bad. It's very, all these modifier tables for like when you're on ice or when you're climbing a tree. This is terrible. But yeah, so then I revisited Troika and appreciated more the stuff that Daniel Sell was doing in it. And my goodness, freaking mean is such a great idea. And what was the other thing? Oh, the thing that I actually like most that Daniel Sell did, like more than anything, I love it so much, is one piece of math that he uses in the game, which is he changes skill in Fighting Fantasy, Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the original book. When you create your character, skill is 1d6 plus 6, I think. So you can have a max skill of 12, which makes all your rolls crazy skewed. It's like way too high. And when I read Daniel Sell's book and I saw it's 1d3 plus 3, I was like, wow, that just fixes all of that math. Completely balances the whole game.
Right.
What a brilliant man.
what a brilliant, he divided it by 2 because it was insane. But no, it is like so much of what I love about Troika is like, is the actually even the conceit of calling the rules procedures, right? Like we talk about procedural creation for American game design, but the reality is we're oftentimes not doing that. We're creating rule systems, like Into the Weird and Wild, what we played last week, Ava Islam's Errant. Like those games are doing a good job, or those systems do a good job of actually creating procedures you can drop in. It's one of my other favorite things about designing for Troika or for British OSR is like I wanted alchemy, and there are no alchemy procedures, but it's really easy because of the way the math is set up and the basics of this, and because the math is clean and easy and there's not a lot of need to balance anything out, to just say, okay, what are the essential elements I need to poke into this to create a new set of like 5 procedures maybe that will fill out everything I want to do about this based on the original system. And there's a genius of design that allows you to do that in your system that Daniel did just incredibly well. Like super great book. And so yeah, and then we were talking Greg Sanders from Warlock, which is another OSR like British retro clone system that very similar, does some really cool stuff. It's all this commentary in different ways on fighting fantasy, whether it's a memory or Warhammer Fantasy. Like it's the memory of some of these classic pieces, but it is like that was solidly designed. Further systems that came in and tried to capture the setting with completely different mechanics don't even feel like the same systems. Like they feel like you're sitting down and playing a really complex Euro game, not a role-playing game. Totally. And so like there's so many things there that are just absolutely crazy. I interrupted you there, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I've read some of Warlock, and yeah, the whole fighting fantasy combined with like early Warhammer fantasy, very interesting. And the art style really sort of encapsulates that sort of muddy grittiness to it too. I like that a lot. But yeah, what other things do I try and do mechanically? I introduced polyhedral dice because I know that like people really love that you can just use d6s. But I'm just and I feel like in 1989 or whatever, just using d6s was extremely useful to everyone because polyhedral dice, I mean, they were around. D&D was popular, right? But it was still much easier to just pull open a board game and grab some d6s from it. And now I'm just like, I can pull up a dice calculator for free on my phone. Like, why not use polyhedral dice? I like polyhedral dice. I want to use the whole set. So I introduce a dice chain mechanic into the game so that you can modify things without having to like add numbers. It's just like, oh, you're trying to test something, but it's like there's some sort of external thing that's making it more difficult. Like you are being attacked while trying to cast a spell or something. Okay, cool. Roll 2d8 or 2d10 instead of 2d6. And yeah, and I really liked that how that sort of design came together, especially in playtesting. Like people really responded well to that in playtesting.
Well, there is something that feels powerful about it, right? Like
Mhm.
rolling advantage feels like, okay, maybe this will work out, maybe it's not. Grabbing a new type of dice, that's a whole nother level of like power trip
Mhm.
when you're like going up a level. Um,
Yeah, and you don't have to do math in your head. Like I could have said, "Oh, get a +2 or a +5 bonus," which would have been like roughly equivalent, right? But then you're like, "Okay, I'm rolling these dice and then I'm adding that." Hold on a minute, let me think. Whereas it's just like, "Oh, I'm just rolling different dice and I'm just totaling the
and I'm
numbers
just
out."
looking at that number. No, I
Yep.
think it's absolutely phenomenal. This the whole project, right? It's this integration of gameable content. Like it is a system in and
Mhm.
of itself. Stories, which you had people write to fuel this, and music, and that's a level of complexity that a lot of people are not looking to engage in when designing. I think from a player standpoint, like the way you've interspersed the stories into learning the rules, these stops, these kind of beats that you get a little bit of a sense of the style of play you're looking at, and the way also that you as the person creating it and the person managing the team were intentional about bringing those different perspectives in. I think is really amazing and kind of breaks things up. But that feels like it feels like a big swing, right? This is your second design. Your first design had some similarities. What made you desire to incorporate kind of all these different art forms, game design, narrative stories, and music into one thing? Like,
Well, I think it's just because those are all things that I do as hobbies, right? I like gaming and I like tinkering with game rules. I really like writing, especially short fiction, and I really like making music. So I really wanted to just like do. You've had this discussion before, I think, on your show, but like, who do we make art for? We first and foremost, I think, make art for ourselves, right? So I was like, I want to make the thing that I want to play or that I want to see in the world. Like, I really want to see a game book that has short fiction in it and that maybe has a music component and that has rules that are like this. And since I'm not seeing it, I'm just going to make it
yeah.
because then even if nobody else buys it, at least I'm like, well, I'll use it. Why not?
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know?
I think there are different, like we talked a lot about, there are different answers to that question, but the way you answer that question tells you a lot about what you're going to design. Like it came up with Daniel Sell, it's come up with a couple other people. Like the way your ethereal voice manifests in what you're doing. Like if you're designing a game because it is things you love, then the game is going to be personal. It's going to say a lot about you. If you're designing a game because you're thinking my friends and I like want to have this experience together, that puts the focus in a different place and it makes the art look different because all of a sudden it's not going to be what is personal to me, but it's going to be what is significant to us as a play group. If you think, hey, I really want to write this to make $1 million, it's going to put a focus on something different. Good luck. Let me know how it works
Hey,
out.
listen, you might
Uh,
succeed, all right, and make a lot of money. Give some to me when you do that.
right.
But
But yeah, like where who you are designing for, and the question of who your art is for does, I think, like directly impact the design you end up with. Even if you were to sit down and to try to design the two systems, one for you versus one for your table or you and your friends, I think you'll end up with two very different things. Which I think we try to kind of sometimes approximate through play testing is like, well, I'm now inviting feedback, but I feel like that's actually a different thing,
Mhm.
because it's not a communal building process at that point in time. Even though you brought in tons of community, right? That's not a critique in any way, shape, or form. Both are fully valid. You're just going to end up with different functions on that, and
Sure.
so yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like there's things that I didn't change after playtesting. Like I got feedback
Oh
and
yeah,
I was like, yeah, this thing that I was thinking of, this doesn't work. Let's
yeah.
let's change that. There was mechanically there was a big thing I wanted to do where I wanted to have social encounters. Because I'm a big believer in sort of the philosophy of if you have a game, the amount of time the game spends giving you options to do a certain thing, that's what the game is telling you you're supposed to do when you play it. So, like the Dungeons and Dragons, just in general, sort of example is like they give you 50 million rules for combat. Like there's initiative order, there's bonuses to hit, there's all these different things, weapon damage, all this stuff. So it's like a super complex procedure. And then for social interaction, it's just like you can roll a d20 to try and deceive them, and that's opposite. So I always look at that and I'm like, okay, well then D&D is telling me that it wants me to fight.
That it's a
Because
combat
that's
game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean that's not controversial as a statement at all. I think a lot of people recognize that. But that
I mean,
was
there are
why
a lot of people who will disagree with it, but yes, I do not
sure.
think that is a controversial statement. And it's hard. I mean, the facts bear it out to a large degree, right? Like trying to name the three pillars somehow offset that, I don't think is a valid statement when you look at the design execution, you know?
Yeah. But like, but that was why when I was designing this game, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make combat really stripped down, which is easy to do in fighting fantasy to begin with, right? And then I'm going to make a rule system for social encounters, and it's going to be very different than combat, but it is going to be no less complex because I want to send the message to people that like, hey, that you should be putting just as much weight on social encounter that you would put on fighting. You know, I turned to gambling because why not? You know,
both
Many
personally
people
and
do that.
professionally, you know?
Yeah, in times of stress, lots of people do that. So that was for me, it was no different. But no, I'd been listening to a lot of different sort of design philosophy stuff and thinking a lot about conversations in real life and in RPGs and how it's a lot of like, especially with haggling, right? Which is what I had Logan sort of make this art to depict on this page. The idea that like you're trying to get something from somebody and they might know something about this thing that you're trying to get that you don't know. And I just was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, gambling is such a good analog for that. So yeah, I just basically made a gambling system, and depending on what their disposition is towards you, they're gonna have like different dice that they roll, you roll, and you hide your rolls from each other, like picking cards out of a like poker deck or whatever. And then you can ante by rolling a die and then keeping that roll revealed. And then towards the end, it's like all the ante rolls are down, so you know what everyone's revealed cards, you know, but you still don't know what the base roll is. So then you have to like make that decision. Okay, are we gonna call it? Are we gonna end the social encounter? Are we gonna try and double down and keep it going because we don't think we have enough? And who's gonna win? And then you know, the disposition gets affected depending on like how that outcome goes.
I love that. And like I said, there's just a lot of little things that you've done in this book to take, like the classic kind of OSR approach is oftentimes like is hyper minimalist and tries to create like a unified one thing does everything, which is where you end up when that drifts into things like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, where some part of that has gotten all these other mechanics built up around it, but the other parts have not, because that unified feel doesn't quite match those things. And so they've stayed very simple where other things have built up. And you've done a just tremendous job in the same way that I think a lot of British OSR inspired games do, of pulling in enough different types of procedures that use the same concepts, but the language that you build around them, the concepts that you build around them, it's just very, very smart, and it gives a sense of priority to each one without you having to learn a new thing. Errant does this incredibly well, and it ends up feeling a lot like you're playing mini games within your role-playing session, that like the social mechanic is this type of mini game and the combat mechanic is this type of mini game. However, having played one, you have some inherent understanding of the way that the others work also, which I think is just tremendously well refined design when you go through that. Like that's, you know, one of the things I honestly, like, I do feel like like all of the marketing I've seen for the game has oftentimes undersold it. Like, people are very excited because it's like, it's music, it can salute the body, who a lot of us love. You've got this great collaboration team. And in some ways I feel like in the middle of that, the smartness of this system and a lot of the things you've done with it have gotten lost in the middle of that. Like, I feel like that part hasn't come to the forefront, which that's not a critique, other than you've done a really great job and more people should know about it.
No, Tony, you're right. The next time I tweet about this, I just need to tell everyone how smart I am. I'm just like, guys, you do understand, you need to buy this because I'm so smart.
Yeah. Well, it's oftentimes, I mean, it's also just like, I'm going to show people this image also too from the invasion. Like, it's such a great image. Like, it is, it's the team all working together, but it is, there's this level, like, check this image out. Like, that's so good. Oh
yeah.
But I think like the way the blurb on Bandcamp, which I want to talk to you about that choice also. I know we talked about it right before stream also. Um, uh, Bandcamp is not a game platform, right? And so, and a lot of dungeon synth and other game music that comes out, it's just game music. So it might be reflecting on a game, it might be, but we're not seeing a lot, even the ones that have come out with adventures, they're like system agnostic inside the fold thing. They're not systems in and of themselves. Like this is something we haven't really seen, and because it's on Bandcamp, therefore people kind of lead with this is mostly music, and you're like, yeah, there's a rules light British OSR style thing that comes with it, and that's it. Like that's the entire description on the page of what it is.
There's also a game that comes with this. I hope you enjoy it.
Which I understand I understand and I appreciate. Like I'm great at selling other people's games. I am horrible at selling my own games. By the way, to go to plus1exp.com and check out Beards and Beyond. It's phenomenal. But it is that thing. Like you made an intentional choice to like put it on Bandcamp and kind of lead with that, even though it's on, you can get the game on itch. That's what you've done. Talk a little bit about that choice. Like you could have put up both. You could have put both on itch and both on Bandcamp, but like I said, you kind of made this focused choice to say let's do Bandcamp. Why as a designer was that a choice you made?
Oh gosh, well, to your earlier point, I'm just really bad at marketing myself, and that's mostly why it's it's very sparse in terms of why the sort of write up on it. But yeah, I really wanted to have the musical element because I thought it was cool. And I really wanted because like you were saying, like itch, you can upload any kinds of file types on there because people use it for games all the time, right? So I could easily upload the music to it and just have people be able to buy it as an album from there. But I really wanted just to have the choice for the people who are buying stuff. So I could be like, hey, if you want to buy the album, go to the Bandcamp page, because I like Bandcamp in terms of like their philosophy and them as a company and everything and what they do for small music artists. And then like if you really aren't interested in music at all, in the musical element of this, like I disagree with you, but I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. You can go over to itch and just get the game. So it was more just about giving customers choice, right? But I don't know if there's anything deeper to it than that. I wish I had a better explanation for it,
Well, but talk a little, like people may not know, like talk about what does Bandcamp do to support the artist on it compared to some other platforms. Like I know it's a better share, there's some other pieces to it, but like as somebody who I can enjoy music, like I've enjoyed your music a lot this week. The part of my brain that appreciates music and attaches to it doesn't work. Like I don't get attached to music. I can fully enjoy it. But then later on, if somebody's like, what's your favorite song? I mean, the answer is The Offspring and Art Garfunkel, but only because I really love their lyrics and their style. And there's no connection between those two bands and why I love both of them. That's fine. But I don't have a deep emotional attachment to either one of those two. And so the reality is like, I know that it's a great company, but I don't know a lot about it. So talk a little bit about that philosophy.
Just the fact, I think because I'm old and I don't like streaming music, I really like owning music. So it was one of those things where like I got older and I moved away from physical medium. And I wanted to still have like MP3s of stuff. And then I noticed everyone was like, oh, well, just download Spotify and just stream everything on there. And I'm like, but I want to have the album. I just want to have it on my computer or my iPhone or whatever and listen to it that way. And that's when I found Bandcamp, and they're basically just a platform where you can go on there and post your music on there, and you get like a really good revenue share of it. I think the site gets like 10%, right? Which is a super great deal, and just especially a good deal in light of the kind of raw deal that artists get from streaming platforms, So I'm just like, it's preserving the way that I want music to be. You can download it in like all these different like lossless formats, because the site, like the people who made the site care about that, because they understand like audiophiles care about that, which is nice. And they're giving people a good revenue split. I don't know, maybe it's just me being old and being like, I just want to keep rebelling against streaming music, so this is like the way to listen to music the way I used to. you know. But it's cool. It just feels way more artist centric than a lot of the other ways people listen to stuff these days. So I'm like, you know what? That's cool. Let's have more people use this site. It's great.
So yeah, I just, it makes me think about like, yeah, I mean, how many other people out there who are starting to do music with their stuff aren't aware that they can just pop it up on Bandcamp and that they could attach their game to it also, or their adventure to it, or their whatever, if they wanted to, right? To create another platform.
That's another funny thing about Bandcamp, where they're like, we'll let you just upload random extra stuff, like, because they assume that musicians are going to upload like like album like fold outs or whatever. I'm forgetting what they're called, but you know, yeah, like any kind of thing that would come with the CD or the album or the cassette or whatever that would have lyrics or whatever. So they're like, oh, you can upload image files or PDFs that have that stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, so I can upload any PDF? So that means an RPG. I can put an RPG in there. All right, I'll do that.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and they have like huge file size limits. So I'm like, cool, whatever. I can fit whatever I want in there. It'll be great.
Yeah, because they're used to people uploading music, not PDFs, right? So like, there's not those issues. No, like I said, it's a really cool thing, and like I said, it was like, I remember when I was watching the art for the Project Evolve, I was hearing you talk about the game, and then like the music came up to the forefront, and I was like, I'm still super excited about this, and I was really excited to have you kind of come join us on the channel. It's been really great to talk to you both about the project. You have, like you said, you have another project that you did that's the one that you did before this last year that's kind of they're not connected at all, but you have Shifting Cities, right, which is also a music and adventure combination.
Yeah. So it's a system agnostic setting zine and called the Shifting City, and it's kind of just my send up to like Sigil or the City of Brass kind of stuff. It's like a city that shifts through dimensions, so you can have it appear in your game just randomly, and it's where a bunch of people buy and sell all sorts of magic items, and it's dominated by aristocrats and thieves guilds that are always fighting for control of the city. And it's really just a critique of capitalism and how capitalism like only breeds bad things. But yeah, it was really fun to do, and it's way more because on this I did almost everything myself. Like I said, I have my co-author Chris, who works with me frequently on stuff, and he helped me with some of the random tables, but everything else in terms of setting and stuff is all me. So you get like all the music tracks in it, the Dungeon Synth track, onto a different chapter of the book, so that you can listen as you read through and get the vibe of each section, which is cool. It's cool to be able to have that kind of synergy across your entire product. It's just a lot of work. So when you try and do it all yourself. But yeah, Shifting City is it's system agnostic, so throw it in there. It's the generators for the thieves guilds and the Panjandrum, the aristocrat people in it, I think came out really well. You can just generate some weird stuff like thieves guilds that are like mute undead that leave like a calling card that's like a song that plays magically on a loop at the scene of the crime, and like the aristocrats can have like you generate like their entourages, and they can have like a bunch of octopus people that follow them around and all know magic and divine the future market trends for them. It's very silly. I like a lot of the stuff in that book.
I love it. So last question before we talk, just give people one last call out to the project. You use the term sword dream for this project a lot in the promotion of it, right? And there's this there are some different schools of OSR. I was actually even talking with a friend of the channel, Ava, who I've mentioned a couple times. If you haven't checked out Aaron, go check out Aaron. About, you know, like, there is not, after Google Plus fell apart, which was ostensibly the place that a lot of OSR lived and a lot of where Sword Dream even emerged, the OSR scene kind of scattered. And hearing people talk about OSR in different ways, like some people are like, it's the OSR, are you inside of it or outside of it? There's all these different ways that people talk about it. But Sword Dream is one of the most interesting ones. So, but it's a term you gravitated to, at least for this project. So why did you like Sword Dream? And what is Sword Dream for people who aren't familiar with it?
So Sword Dream, I will admit I was never part of Google Plus because I saw Google Plus and didn't realize the RPG forum aspect of it, so I just thought it was dumb, and then never interacted
You
with it
were
at all.
wrong, and you're the problem. Google Plus was
Yep.
like Switzerland. It was beautiful, and no one was there.
Yeah, after it fell
But
apart and then I learned about the forums, I was like, oh, dang, that actually sounds great. I wish I had been involved in that. But no, I found out about Sword Dream. I don't remember the first time I found out about it, but I found this nifty graphic online, the 9 principles of Dream.
yeah,
That was like that I have up right now. So I'm just gonna. So I saw it. I was very taken by it. Right, a lot of the 9 principles. Right. So you have Dream, which stands against hate and prejudice in all forms, and you seek to actively oppose bigotry and harassment in gaming communities. And like I said, bring in people from different perspectives and trying to give a new look at pulp, and sort of have it be like anti-colonial and like anti sexism and like anti-bigotry and stuff was like a big part of this game. So I was like, okay, cool, I want to go in that direction. That would be great. Tries to be radically inclusive. Yeah, I tried to bring in a lot of different people from different backgrounds because I wanted their input on the project, so there was that. Tries to encourage the use of sensible tools for communication and consent. One of the things I put, the first entry in the rules section of the game is lines and veils. Because I was like, yeah, when you sit down to play a game, before you even learn how to play the game, you're just sitting around a table with people. You should establish lines and veils, like, obviously.
yeah.
Because that's what I do, in my personal gaming. So I was like, yeah. Let's see, some of the other ones: opposing harassment and strives for non-toxic discourse. I try to do that as a person, is not be toxic, so that's the whole thing. Yeah, values creators in their work, support equitable pay for professional creators and fair treatment for hobbyists. This was a big deal because people deserve to be paid more for the things they write. This has kind of been a discourse that's bubbled back up
It's
recently.
back. Yeah, I think we're on the back end of it, but it was very hot last week.
Twitter, everyone. But no, I was like, I don't understand why you'd pay someone less than 20 cents a word, especially if they're giving you stuff that's cool, because writing is already such like a thankless job most of the time.
Right.
So when I established my budget for this, I budgeted to pay all these writers 20 cents a word, and I wasn't going to pay them any less than that. The only caveat that I'll give is for in some cases, I'd be like, just don't write more than this many words, because that's what I have room for in the book and what I have budgeted for.
I can pay you 20 cents a word for this many words, but that's a fair barrier. Like, I mean, to say like, that's what the budget allows, and you can't just keep on writing forever because I don't have infinite money. Like, that's a fair thing to say. Like, that's a good way to set up the boundaries for a project too. So no, I've been watching, I watched that conversation. It's also like sometimes the number, and I understand like when you're putting together a bunch of different contributors for a much larger project, there are some differences in that, but also like when somebody's writing 100 words for you, or like when they're writing 500 words for you, or when they're writing 4,000 words for you, those dollar amounts are not, I mean, they pile up, but they're not any of them individually a crazy high number. Like,
no, it's 20 cents a word. It's like not that much money per word. It's like why can't just freaking pay people? So yeah, that was a big priority for me when I was doing this project, that I was going to pay people what they were worth, and not just for writers, like artists too. Logan, I had a lot of conversations with where he would send me something, and then later on I'd be like, because of this change that we made to the rule, like this part of this piece of art doesn't make sense. Can you go back and change it? How much is that alteration going to cost?
Right.
And he would be like, I'll just do it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pay you to do it, because this was already a finished piece. I'm paying you to alter it. And I like even worked out in it. There's a bunch of art in our, we have a concept art folder in like the Google Drive for this game. And I was like, Logan, what hourly rate do you want? And he was like, I don't know. How about this? And I'm like, cool. Okay, go do concept art. That's your hourly rate. And he was like, oh, okay.
Right. But I can pay you for this many hours.
Yes. I was like, just don't go over like 20 hours, please.
Right.
But yeah, no, go do it. So there was a lot of me trying to be like, please just take take the money that you are worth, because that's important to me as a cornerstone for this project. And yeah, some of the other parts of Dream, like avoiding gatekeeping and trying to be experimental with your world design and doing sort of like anti-canonical stuff. Yeah, were all sort of things I was thinking about when I was concepting the project. So I was like, I think this really makes sense as as a hashtag for this game, and sort of an umbrella to put it under. I had a funny interaction on Reddit with somebody when I first posted about this game.
Not Reddit.
Not Reddit. Where they said this project looks really cool, but Sword Dream sucks and I hate it. And then they like went off about all the ways they hated Sword Dream, and my response was just like, I disagree. You can have your own opinion. I'm gonna be non-toxic. I'm gonna disagree with you, and this is like why I think it's beneficial. And then I like listed the things and like why I want to use it. And yeah, and you can have your own opinion, right? And that's kind of how I try to engage with people who are super negative. Is I'm like, listen, I know I'm not gonna change your mind. I know how the internet works, okay? Right. I'm not gonna, but I'm just gonna say like that I disagree and why, and try to like bear that out in the simplest terms.
Right. Well, that like for me, the funny thing is like to say like, oh, this looks like a really cool project, but I don't like what it is. Like, is such an interesting thing, because basically it was like, I really do like this, and basically is into telling you shouldn't use this term because I don't like this term, even though I like your thing. Which is just such a weird thing to try to tell a creator. It's like, I don't like indie designs. I only like Dungeons and Dragons, but I really like your game, so you should just call it Dungeons and Dragons. Would be a really weird flex, and that's exactly what that person did. It's also what some other large publications have done recently, but whatever. That's still a very odd thing. And so, yeah, it's a term that I love. I have a huge affinity for Sword Dream and what it's trying to do. I honestly think this is my hot take on Sword Dream. Are you ready? If they could have got it down to 7 or less principles, it would have had a lot more legs.
Some of those principles seem a little repetitive, I'm not gonna lie.
And so
they're good. It's like you're reiterating really good points, but I'm like, you're still reiterating.
And there's nuance to it, but like also the human brain has a hard time with 7, but anything above 7, it's just like, no, I'm done. I don't remember that at all anymore. And so that's my hottest of hot takes on Sword Dream, is that I love it. If somebody wants to do like maybe like short Sword Dream, like that's the next thing. So writes down note in design journal, come up with short Sword Dream. And so that's awesome. No, I love it. And we're huge fans of safety tools on the channel. And thinking about like, and there are people who are like, oh, I don't like lines and bails. Great. There are other toolkits out there, and some toolkits are not even safety tools, though they include them. They're basically the things that say, here are the rails for how we have a great time tonight. And I don't know why anybody would be against saying, here's what keeps us on track for a great time around the table. And so it's always weird to me when people push back. If you want an example of a really great toolkit book that is not Lines and Bails, go look at what Wanderhome did for its toolkit, or any of the belonging outside belonging systems for the most part. They all do really great things with toolkit work. And so huge fan. And then go check out Bo Sheldon if you want more conversations about some other Lex, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciated it. I had a blast getting to listen to these great jams. One more time, if you want to check out the project, you can hit the link below for below Lex's face for the itch version. I'm going to drop the link to the Bandcamp version. And one more time, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, it's also in the description of this video as well, to take you over to Bandcamp. If you're not old like me and can figure out how to download things from Bandcamp, it's really great. It's really easy. And I did eventually figure it out. The art is absolutely amazing. The collaborative team is great. I loved getting to hear your approach to the whole project tonight. Hopefully, if my life ever slows down, or if I just learn how to say no, we'll be able to have you on sometime to play it right now. But we are focusing a lot on Latin American RPGs and RPGC for the summer. So if you're out there, if you're a creator who wants to come on, please let me know. We're also going to be talking a lot about the Lumen hack system, the Lex Collective, over the course of the next little bit. So if you're a designer out there and you want to come on, please let us know. Here on Plus One EXP, we don't believe that designers should have to pay for professional quality promotion and content. So if you want to help support the channel, you can go to coffee.com/plus1exp. If you're watching on Twitch, there's a link down below. If not, the link's on the screen right now. Help keep content free. We've got a couple giveaways we're going to be doing on the over there this month. A few physical games we're going to be giving away, and then we have a digital game from our Troika Alchemy supplement that our supporters there will get as well. Also, if you want to come back and watch an actual play tomorrow night, we're sitting down and we are playing Parish Danforth's Altera Age of Adventure. I am super excited to sit down and play it. Parish has been a regular feature here on the stream. You may have seen him in any number of actual plays that we've done, but Parish is a designer in his own right and has been working on this for a long time. If you're looking for a noble bright setting that's great for getting younger players, I've heard of players as young as 3 playing the game, into RPGs, please do. But it looks like it's going to be an absolute blast for us as grown-ups also. That's tomorrow night, and I am deeply looking forward to it. With that said, Lex, tell people one more time where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Itch, basically the same place, and Bandcamp, basically the same place.
We got a slight audio gap there. Say it one more time for me.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dank Dungeons, and by searching Dank Dungeons on Bandcamp or Itch.
Awesome. I am looking forward to. I've been jamming on this album. Because I'm a dummy who couldn't figure out to do it, I just got access to the system a little bit before we started. But it's an absolutely beautiful thing. I am so excited by the way that Lex has put this together. I would highly encourage people to go check it out, and I'll be hyping it up a lot over the next week. So please do. This has been Prestige Class with Lex Mandrake, the most villainous name we've ever had on the stream. And until next time, class dismissed.